Some call it insight. Others call it vision. At Pershing, we call it perspective. A perspective you'll benefit from a custodian you can rely on. One who can help navigate the big picture and whose products give you a competitive edge. One who considers everything. What will help you succeed today and tomorrow? Open yourself to a new perspective and open the possibilities. Consider everything. BNY Mellon Pershing. Learn more at Pershing.com/go independent. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC, member FINRA SIPC.
What's going on, guys? Rich Butler here. Thanks for hitting that download button and downloading episode 5 of Toys and Tech of the Trade, your one-stop shop for toys, tech, and talk with some assembly required. My guest for this episode is Jose Betancourt, also known as JVB. He is not only a friend of the Rageworks Network, but also a colleague of mine when it comes to action figure reviews and coverage on the site, and we wanted to include him as our next featured Rageworks creator. Slick was the first person who actually requested JVB be next, and he was kind enough to take time out of his day and share some of the gear that he uses. JVB, in addition to being a podcaster, a gamer, action figure, and model collector, is also a very, very accomplished photographer. Even though he is extremely modest about his skills, JVB has an amazing eye when it comes to photography, and he is going to share some of that gear with you guys, as well as some podcasting stuff and a little bit of toy talk as well. Without any further ado, let's turn it over to JVB and learn about the toys and tech of his trade. All right, my friend Jose Betancourt, aka JVB, joins us on this new episode of Toys and Tech of the Trade. JVB is a man of many talents. He has, number one, a stellar singing voice. In addition to that, he's a YouTuber, a photographer, and one of the pioneers in podcasting. You know, he's one of those unsung heroes that goes and has been generating content in the space since the early 2000s. JVB, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, man, for such a great introduction.
So, I mean, you know, one of the first things I want to get into, you're a podcasting pioneer, something that, you do not advertise a lot, which is amazing, because a lot of the guys that have been in this game for a long time, they pretty much want to rip open their shirt and go, I've been podcasting 20 years. Look at me. But you've been in the trenches, man, talking about games. You've been very, very deep in the gaming industry. So I want to start with that. And, what got you into podcasting as a medium?
Well, I happened to run into it accidentally on a video game website. And they were talking about Halo. And they introduced a podcast called Podtacular, and which I eventually became co-host of. And the host, Fumo Jive, was talking about how Halo was the main focus of this podcast. And at the time, I was a huge Halo fan, still is, or I still am. And so I was like, I got to somehow find this podcast. I went to the website. At the time, iTunes was becoming more or easier, giving us easier access to find podcasts. So I managed to constantly go to the website and then eventually subscribe on iTunes. And from there, I got wind of not Gamercast Network, but there was a podcast that started with Gamercast Network, or started the Gamercast Network, which is similar to your network. And a gentleman by the name of Chris Palladino and his brother and a few other guys got together every week and spoke about video games. So it felt a lot like when you and I were growing up and we would hang out with our friends playing Tecmo Bowl, Sega Genesis, talking trash about, Mortal Kombat or Madden or Tecmo Bowl, and just spending the entire night talking about video games or arguing about video games, either or.
Of course.
And I remember saying, wow, I would love to do that. That is as close to getting back to my old days of arguing with my friends in front of the building or wherever. And I would love to get into that. And eventually I wind up doing my first podcast with Podtacular. And from there, it was a natural marriage or happy marriage.
Nice. And from there, give us the origin story or the issue one of talking about games and how that came into fruition.
Yeah, talking about games was a collaboration between me and some other podcasters, the Achievement Junkie, Nelson and Natalie Rodriguez. I'm sure you've heard of them.
Yep.
Jay, who used to be part of Uncle Gamer, Paris, who's now part of Game Attack Radio. And we got together because we were familiar with the gaming community. We were podcasters, and we figured that we'd combine our communities, our knowledge, because each of us had a different skill set that would benefit the website as a whole. So I was more the community guy, and we created this really, really good community. It had active forums at the time. We had a lot of content coming in, a lot of review material. And because we had a lot of contacts within the industry, it took off for a little bit. But as we all know, maintaining a video game website, it's a lot of work. So everyone eventually got video game industry jobs.
Wow.
And Jay is still working within the industry. So is Nelson and Natalie. I had a short run in the gaming industry. So it really benefited. And that is partly why the website is no longer running. But yeah, for say a good 5 years, I had a nice little run.
Okay. Now, back when you started, what gear were you using to create podcasts back in the early 2000s? Because for me, it was a USB headset and Audacity and just hoping for the best.
It's true. I had Audacity, and I had when Radio Shack was still around, I bought a $30 headset. It was a headphone that came with a microphone attached. And I remember I couldn't really adjust my sound. So I had to be very careful with the P's that they didn't pop.
Yep.
And then when we were done recording, everybody would send their own individual audio. And I believe it was usendit.com at the time.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we would upload it there, and Fumo Jive would grab the audio, try to sync everyone. I give him a lot of credit because at times we did 3 shows a week.
Wow.
So, well, we would do enough content for 3 shows a week. So he would split it. So imagine splitting audio for 3 different shows.
Yeah,
so he put
crazy.
in a lot of work and did the website, which at the time you could imagine was a chore in itself. So yeah, it was a flimsy little Radio Shack headset with Audacity.
And obviously since then you've been upgrading. Now, what was the last? I know you're a big supporter of Blue microphones. I believe you still do a lot of your voice work with the Spark, right? The Blue Spark.
Yes, the Blue Spark Pearl. And even though the microphone is called Blue, the manufacturer, the microphone itself is orange. And it's funny because I'm sure you're familiar with what's his name? I can't believe I can't believe I forgot his name. His name is in the tip of my tongue. Marquise Brownie.
Oh yeah, MKBHD.
He had this microphone. Yes, MKHD, and he had this microphone. I remember watching him talk about something, and I saw the microphone, so I looked for the review if he had a review for it, and lo and behold, he's reviewing it, and I'm like, wow, that sounds really good. I gotta look for this, and I went to Sam Ash, I believe, in Queens, and bought it for $150 at the time, which was maybe about 7 years ago.
Wow.
And that's what I'm using right now. So,
and you've always, and you've been even going back then, were you always a Mac guy also? Because JVB, for those of you that don't know, he uses a lot of Mac, a lot of Apple products. Were you a big Mac guy back then too?
No, back then I had a nice little, what's the company that went out of business with the cow?
Gateway?
Man. Yes. I had a Gateway for many years.
Wow.
I had a Gateway. And you know what? At the time, because and it's crazy to think that at the time I did not care about specs, even though I used to play some PC games, basic, Quake 2, everything like that. The only specs I cared about was like the latest 3D accelerator, which was from Voodoo at the time. That was like my only upgrade. But as far as everything else, I didn't care, what type of processing speed I had. So it seemed normal that, it took a while for my audio to upload, things of that sort. I really didn't care because everything was so new. But now, yes, I use an iMac. I even upgraded to a 27-inch 5K iMac. And I do I used to do a lot of my YouTube editing on my iPad Pro, which handles it with ease. I mean, it's just amazing how these small devices are so powerful and capable of doing 4K video editing.
Were you editing audio on GarageBand when you made the switch to the Mac?
Yes. Believe it or not, I was using Audacity up until 2007. And one day when I was while living in Florida, we used to do the whole SFX 360. We used to do events, podcasts, YouTube, everything like that. So one day Julie was editing, and they used to use Mac way before I even could afford one.
Right.
And I saw her editing and like working on the audio, and it was so
the light went off, huh?
Swift. Yeah, it was swift and easy. And I'm like, wow, you're doing that pretty quick. And she goes, oh, I love Macs. I'm never going back. So that's when the time came, and this was 2010 when I could afford one. I went with an iMac, and haven't looked back. Even though now in today's time, you can use Audacity, still around, and it's still very capable because, believe it or not, I was talking about Marquise Brownie. He still uses, well, at least up till a few years ago, he was still using Audacity for his audio. And, his audio is on point. Yeah,
it's funny. I used Audacity full time for editing almost everything on the network fully till about last year.
Okay.
And even now, oddly enough, my process is a little different because I run everything through Alphonic to level it. But Audacity does something that I still have yet to see a more premium program do. And they have a thing which is truncate silence to remove, those long pauses.
Yep.
Dude,
I love that, man.
Dude, I have yet, like I'm using Hindenburg Journalist, it's a $300 and something app, program.
But Audacity's free.
Yeah, but, and dude, not even Hindenburg has it. And now
Wow.
I'm using Adobe Creative Suite for a lot of the video stuff. And even that, man, like there's nothing that's just as easy as that. And don't get me wrong, it's not a one-stop shop, but in those times when there's those little awkward pauses, man, Audacity, just runs right through it.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Because I'm very guilty of doing these pauses when I'm talking, and I'll pause, and I do it somewhat, instead of saying or I'll try to make it a little more dramatic by pausing and thinking of something as I'm paused. So I'm kind of guilty of that. So that used to help me a lot. And also Levelator, which is another free software that you can use with Audacity. So you had all the tools right there. And throughout the years, podcasting became easier and easier and easier. And here we are now with a overabundance of different types of podcasts.
Well, strangely enough, also, you gradually transitioned over the course of our friendship. You transitioned from doing podcasting, then you jumped into YouTube, and you've been doing YouTube quite a bit. Why the sudden shift change? What pushed you to even want to explore that? Especially someone, you're busy, you're a family man, you have a real job, like most of us.
Well, you and I were talking off air briefly, and it's all about, with me, I get bored really quick. And if I'm not doing something that challenges my attention, my creativity, I get really frustrated. So doing YouTube, I started dabbling in it here and there. I did a video with my son, and it wound up being like a little mini blooper because he was like singing about Spider-Man, and he's like maybe 4 or 5 years old, and he almost falls off my lap. And the way it looked, he disappeared from the video, and it looked like he fell, and I'm like laughing. So I started experimenting a little more and more. My very first E3 video, it was very boring. Like I looked at it and I'm like, wow, nobody's going to look at this. I'm just sitting there talking, looking into the video camera and, you know, I had the little webcam and I'm like very mellow and bored. I bored myself watching it. So I was like, I don't think I'm ready for YouTube yet. But it wasn't until doing more events with SFX 360 and getting a little more familiar with more upgraded technology and then getting into cameras where I can actually record myself. It wasn't maybe until 2011, maybe 2012 where I seriously got into YouTube. So I eventually opened an account. One of my biggest and earliest videos was talking about the Vita. And to this day, it has like 400,000 views and hundreds and hundreds of comments. But a lot of those comments are that I either sound like Obama or I get a few Christopher Walkens and, you know, a few actors. So it's like nonsense or people talking to, you know, like, hey, that's not a hidden feature, you know, things.
Oh, yeah.
It's YouTube. So, you know,
exactly.
You're going to get the
Troll
good and the
Patrol.
Yeah. So lately I haven't been able to, and it's not because of anything specific that I'm busy. It's just mentally, I haven't been able to concentrate much on YouTube because we were talking earlier, and I hate to be. And one of my co-hosts one time told me, he goes, JVB, you got to always be different. You can't, and he's correct. If I see a trend, I just totally go away from it. And I'd rather not do something than be part of a trend that I personally don't like. And what I see in YouTube a lot, especially from tech reviewers, and photography, which I do as well. For example, the photography vlogs. I don't know how many of them you watch, but it always seems like they got to start off with doing a B-roll at 125 frames a second. They slow it down or whatever. Yep. And then they show the coffee. There's always got to be coffee. There's always got to be this fancy techno music.
Why do I feel you're talking about Peter McKinnon?
Well, he's one of them, but he's actually one of the guys that does it really good.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's very talented. But absolutely. Yeah, it's like everybody, and this is what I'm talking about, trends. They see that, and there's all of a sudden you see a million other Peter McKinnons wannabe. And it's like, and then, you know, hey, what's up? You know, that's his thing, or not necessarily his thing, but that's his niche.
Yeah, he jumps in.
Hey, what's up? And, you know, all of a sudden you're hearing people starting off their conversation very enthusiastic. And it's like, I see that and I'm like, I'm so turned off. I'd rather stick to the original. Same thing with MKHD. He's like one of the few reviewers that throughout the years has maintained a consistency of feeling that he's talking to you in a regular tone of voice. Like I feel like that's how he would talk to you if you saw him in the street. And there's very few tech reviewers that actually do that or give me that feeling. So I stick with those. And because I feel like, man, if I start talking a certain way, I never do B-roll. I never do, I don't know. It's just stuff that I get really finicky with. I never do, you know, like the side, what they call that, the when you're reviewing an item and they're like shifting the camera to the side.
Oh, doing like a slider shot,
yes,
like doing
in slow mo, and it's like all the quick cuts where they're talking, and then you see them jumping like from position to position to cut their conversation.
That's the Casey Neistat.
Yes.
That's the Casey Neistat move. You know, it's funny.
Yeah.
And I'm, you know, as we're talking about this, you know, I took not a break from YouTube, but I've been just not as aggressively putting out stuff, and I want to step it up now, obviously.
Yeah,
but
me too.
The thing about it is, you know, you watch all these people, like I watch, you know, MKBHD, Peter McKinnon, Casey Neistat, Jason Vong, iJustine. Oddly enough, she does really good videos.
Yeah, she's gotten a whole lot better, man.
Yeah,
she's a little too fangirlish, but she's gotten really good.
And
credit where credit's due.
Sarah Dici, and you know, I watch them, and it's interesting, you know, as we're talking about that each one has, you know, using a My Hero Academia line, each of them have a quirk, you know, like you look at each of them and you see that there's like iJustine, like I've always noticed her videos, like I don't know what she does. I don't know if it's just how she looks as a person, but it's like, yo, how's your skin that smooth? Like that's impossible. Nobody's skin is that buttery smooth. It's impossible.
Know, right?
and then, you know, MKBHD, I like it.
A lot of makeup, you know?
Yeah. And MKBHD, he has a little bit more of a chaotic, like, you know, it's kind of just a dude sitting in his living room. Peter McKinnon, though, he, like, we were talking about that before, and he's just real pretty. He's like, yo, I'm going to zoom into this coffee real slow and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, you see a lot of these guys, and it's crazy because to go back to what you were saying about being different, it's tough because it's something where, you know, when I was doing the gaming podcast and I was doing the wrestling one, people were like, oh, what wrestling podcast do you listen to? And I was like, none. And they were like, what? How do you not listen to any? And I'm like, I'll tell you why. Because what happens is, even if it's unintentional, it's like when you're around somebody and you pick up one of their catchphrases. Or you pick up one of their tics or their mannerisms. And it's like, I don't want to do that. And that's the problem with to your point, you know, just that with YouTube, because you watch so many just to find inspiration, get ideas. There's another guy, Roberto Blake is another one. And I remember I was doing a video and I'm like, hey, Rich here for Rageworks. And I'm like, oh my God, it's, hey man, Roberto Blake. And I'm like, damn it, you know? So I definitely.
No, it totally makes sense, man, because
tough process.
You've been around just as long as I have. Within video games and podcasting and creating media. And sometimes even with podcasts, you start out of familiarity, and especially back then, because we all used to listen to each other's podcasts.
100%.
All the time, back then, it was mainly to support each other. And then use it as a way to maybe do a cross podcast and
100%.
kind of debate about something, and you know, so on and so on. And unfortunately, out of habit, you start picking up little quirks. But now it's like purpose. It's done on purpose. I'm even so anal about certain things. I pick up the weirdest things. Watching, and I know we're bringing up Marquise Browning a lot, but he's one of the, you know, the innovators
absolutely
in the game. I mean,
he's definitely one of my top 10 that I actually watch when his video drops. It's legit.
He's like
notification. Let me peep it. You know, like hit that play button immediately.
Goes to him. You know, same thing with Casey Neistat. But you know, Marquise started at the age of 14 reviewing his laptop, brand new laptop that he bought, and he started as a little kid. Just decided to review a laptop that he bought, and here he is. So there's something that he does with his eye. I don't know if you ever noticed. He'll look at something on the side, and I see so many people doing that shit. Oh, sorry for cursing.
It's all right.
And it annoys me. And I'm like, why are people doing it? They kind of not only trying to like move like Marquise, they kind of mimicking his eye movement too. And it's like, I can't watch this anymore. So I get real finicky about it. And that's just a me thing. And it's just things that I notice. I'm very observant, and it'll tick me off, you know, to the point where I unsubscribe. And look, a lot of people, especially nowadays, and we were speaking about this, making content creation a career, so much so that we can live off it.
Right.
And it's very difficult. And a friend of mine, he runs Board at Work. I don't know if you ever watched him.
Oh, what's his name?
Yeah, big. I
know you're talking about.
I don't want to. Big E. So, you know, you know him because you know Danny, and she's really close friends with him. And he decided, he and I were talking last Comic-Con, and he was like, "Yeah, I decided I'm going to make YouTube a career." And I see him hustling a lot, and he's one of those guys that still manages to keep very personable. What you see is what you get when you speak to him. So I know for a fact that's genuinely who he is.
Yep, and he creates characters. He has the Colonel.
Yeah.
So you know, he's definitely, and you know, I like his wall of headphones. Like there's definitely little things that definitely make him stick out. And I think that's one of the toughest parts, you know, especially
absolutely
with you know, like when you were doing your YouTube videos consistently, you know, you were talking about toys, you were talking about gear, and you were doing it in such a manner that you were recording it. And this is the funny thing. You were recording it not so much for the people, but for yourself. Yeah. And that's what happens sometimes. People are so hung up on, oh, my audience. Well, if you put out a video and nobody watches it, who'd you record it for? Yourself.
Yeah. You got to be happy about the content you put out there.
Yep.
And you and I know that sometimes you think you knocked it out of the park and it gets no views, no feedback, and something you deem that is very quick and simple and probably not going to get a lot of attention winds up taking off. So it's a very weird formula out there that nobody can master. Only a few really good talented individuals and dedicated individuals can understand somewhat how to make this work.
While we're on the subject of YouTube, you were talking about, doing editing on your iPad. So I'm guessing you're editing in iMovie, or are you also editing in Final Cut?
Fusion.
Fusion.
I use Fusion. Yeah. It was like a $20 app, and it's very powerful. I'm still learning it. I learned, most of the basics, but it's such a very powerful app, mobile app, that I was really surprised by what I can do with it. Now, of course, it's still limited because it's on a tablet, but I still prefer it over iMovie on my iMac. Like,
really?
It's very limited because I can't do 4K, which is weird.
That's a little wild.
I can't edit 4K video on my 5K display.
What the hell?
Same thing with YouTube. If I go on Safari, I can't watch 4K YouTube videos on Safari. I would have to use Chrome.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so it's kind of odd. And so I'll go back to my iPad, and even iMovie on the iPad Pro will do 4K. And it's like, what's going on here?
Yeah, that's a little trippy.
Yeah, which, it's Apple, and we know that they have their methods. But I have the option, and I have the flexibility of going with either one. So if I do a video that I know that I feel doesn't necessarily need 4K, what I'll do is I'll record 4K, and then I'll downsample to 1080p, and there's still more detail and everything like that than an average 1080p video. And I'll keep it 5 minutes or so that it's a quick upload. If I want to get really in depth on a review, I'll do it in 4K, and then I'll edit it, which is weird, on my iPad Pro.
That's
so I can get 4K.
That's pretty wild. And the thing about it is, you're doing a lot of the editing. Are you pretty much creating all the assets and everything yourself, or are you getting templates and doing it like that? Like, how's your process for that? Or you just figure, I'll just throw the video out. I don't need no intro, no outro, nothing fancy. If somebody wants to watch it, they're going to watch it.
I will, all the music, if there's music, sometimes I like to put some background music. It's music that I created on GarageBand.
All right. Look at that.
Yeah, I do. I try to do, as I stated, I try to keep busy.
Yep.
So, my son gets somewhat of his creativity from me doing all types of different things with him. So I'll do the music myself, and I'll basically maybe once in a while throw in a little text somewhere, maybe with my Twitter or Instagram address or the product that I'm reviewing. But besides that, GarageBand is very simple, and Fusion, it's very complex for a mobile device. I've wanted to upgrade to more powerful editing software, but I'm afraid that if I start getting into that I'm going to occupy so much time trying to learn it.
Yep.
That's how I am. I try to learn everything about certain things before I go, which is what you technically should be doing. But I'll sit and watch 8 hours of YouTube videos trying to learn this software.
Yep, that's what happened with Premiere. Yep.
Yeah, so Premiere is very powerful, and I see a lot of people doing great things with it. But I feel that because of the amount of content I'm currently putting out, which is not that much, I feel that what I'm doing is good enough for now. Once I start getting dedicated and throwing out more consistent content, then I'll try to use Premiere Pro or something like that.
Now, the thing about it is that you've made before I jump into that, Adobe recently announced now that you're going to be able to get a full suite pretty much of Photoshop on an iPad.
Yeah.
As somebody, and this will be a good segue into your photography endeavors. How do you feel about that as somebody who uses, like Lightroom and things like that? Now you'll be able to have like a full suite, like right on your iPad.
Yeah, that's amazing. I do use Lightroom. I used it on the Note 8 when I had it. I use it on the iPad Pro. The iPad Pro has been like my go-to device. It's like one of the you know how you purchase something and every time you use it, you're like, this is one of the smartest purchases I've ever made.
100%.
That's the iPad Pro with the pencil. And whenever I do my street photography, I load it onto my iPad Pro. I instantly do my editing right there, and then I'll upload it if I want to. Photoshop, I've dabbled with it here and there. There's certain little tricks I can do here and there. I never really implemented Photoshop into my photography.
Okay.
And there's nothing about, as far as me being against it, because I know there are people who implement Photoshop heavily onto their photos.
Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
Yeah. So if they have the skill set for that, then more power to them. Me personally, I try to keep my photos as close to what they were before I did any type of editing. When I usually do Lightroom editing, I'll try to level out the photo, maybe crop certain things, not too heavily, and adjust certain presets for lighting and mood and things like that. And it all depends how I'm feeling that specific day. With Fuji, I can put it in acros. I have my own little setting for acros, which is black and white, and I just shoot all day with that. So it all depends what mood I'm in. But Lightroom, mobile, it's badass. I'm happy with it. And, now that we're going to get a full dedicated Photoshop application, I guess it's time for me to really delve into that one as well.
Well, you mentioned, that you were using Lightroom on the Note 8. As somebody who's a techie like me, I know you were heavily into the Note 8, and you recently switched back to Apple, correct?
Yeah.
What spurred that? Yeah, what spurred that change? I mean, you were taking some beautiful photography on the Note 8, man.
Thanks a lot, man. Yeah. It's amazing what these cameras can do now on our smartphones.
Yep.
And the old saying, and I'm sure you know what I'm gonna say, is that the best camera you have is the one that's on you.
100%.
So the thing I enjoyed about the Note 8 from a camera standpoint was that I can double tap the button and it would pop up. With the iPhone iPhone XS Max, the one I have, you got the haptic 3D touch to activate the camera. But once I unlock my screen, unless I have the camera app there, I have to scroll down and then, so it was a lot, to me anyway, more familiar, a little faster to launch that camera.
Right.
On the Note 8.
Okay.
So what got me back though, I've always enjoyed bouncing between the Note series and the iPhone. And I felt that the Note 8 at the time was going to be more beneficial to me. And then once I started dabbling with the photo, and then once again, I would use Lightroom because you could take photos, raw photos with the Note camera.
Yep.
Whether it's the 8 or the 9. With the iPhone, it's more like JPEG. So I would take raw photos on the Note 8 and then edit with Lightroom. So you would get more flexibility as to the type of mood you want to make your photos. So, but what got me back into iPhone was mainly that my wife and my son, they have the iPhone 8 Plus, and they used to FaceTime each other, sending, for example, if I had photos or videos of my son's games, I couldn't send them to him. I couldn't airdrop them to him.
Ah, okay.
So, I had to go through a process of uploading it to Google Drive.
Or Google Drive.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? They have the bigger screen, and that's usually why I would go with the 8. Besides the pen, the Note 8, the Note series, period, and the S Pen is like,
that's what I miss,
one of the
man.
Best, one of the best creations ever.
Yeah, I miss it, man. If Apple would have done like the XS Max, and they would have found a way to put a pencil in the phone,
Yeah.
Oh, dude, it'd be game over.
Or even allow us to use the Apple Pencil.
Yep.
As dumb as that would look, it would still give us that flexibility.
Oh, 100%.
But having that pen built into the phone, it's so valuable, and a lot of people didn't understand that.
Yep.
So yeah, that's definitely the biggest thing I miss of the Note 8. But
Okay.
overall, I'm very satisfied with the Max or the
Yeah.
new iPhone.
Yeah, the photos, especially with the adjusting of the bokeh with the portrait mode.
Yeah,
Oh man,
yeah.
that's some. When I saw that, I said, yeah. I mean,
Yep.
unless you're getting like the Pixel 3, which definitely has something similar. I mean, at that point, the fact that you can change the entire composition of a photo
Yeah.
right on your device post without having to worry about, how am I going to black this out, or how am I going to do this, or I don't want people to see this. Now you just do it and you're done. I was like, wow, that's on another level.
Yeah, and you could use, for example, Lightroom again. You could even use the camera app built into Lightroom, and it will give you raw capability. So you can do more editing if you want to use it on your iPhone and have more editing capabilities or flexibility on Lightroom. You can do that. So sometimes I do that with Lightroom. But for the most part, most of the use that we have for our cameras on smartphones is that you have that capability of taking it out of your pocket, doing a snapshot really quick, and posting it up. So,
yeah, I mean, when my daughter was born, it's like I took, I switched back to Canon. I got the Canon M50 mirrorless.
Yeah, very small. Very small, compact.
Yeah, so I threw that on there, and it came bundled with the adapter to use regular Canon lenses. So I attached the Nifty 50 to it, and I said, all right, I'm just gonna leave a Nifty 50 on here, and I'm gonna take her with me to the hospital. So, when she was born, like within the first 30 minutes, I had taken like 25 photos with my phone, like boom, 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 and then with the M50, I took like, I guess what ended up being what my wife used kind of like as a birth announcement photo. It was like the birth announcement photo. It was low light. It was a nice portrait, 50 millimeter.
Nice.
And the beauty with the Canon N50 was I just sent it boom right from there to my phone, from my phone right to the internet, done. And to go back to what you were saying, it's that flexibility, especially with Apple, because like my wife has an iPhone and she was like, oh, AirDrop me that photo. So I'd
exactly.
I totally understand. Now, going into your latest endeavor, photography, when you started getting into it, you were mainly a Nikon guy, right?
Yeah. Actually, I started out with my mobile phones, and then people were telling me, dude, jump to a DSLR, make the next step. And once again, I was like, I really don't want to invest time in learning a whole new system. So finally I said, you know what? It's nearly Christmas time. I got a bonus. I bought me a Nikon D3300, and I bought it at Best Buy. It came with the camera bag, 2 lenses, and it's a very entry level, very, very entry level camera. So my friend Julie was like, learn everything manually. Don't set it to automatic. Do everything yourself. So of course I had to look at a lot of the YouTube videos, understand the process.
Same boat
of ISO, aperture, shutter speed, and everything like that. The next week I outgrew the menu system. No, actually the next week they said the 3400 was out.
Yep.
So I said, oh, I still got time to do an exchange. I took it back, got the 3400, and I outgrew the menu system. I outgrew the camera. It's very small, very lightweight. So it was a very good entry-level camera. The Nikon D7100 went on sale, just the body. And one of my co-hosts, he goes by the name of Heroic Superman, he had the D7100. So I sent him a text, and he goes, if you want to learn about photography, get that camera. It's at a great price, and you don't have to worry about upgrading for a very long time.
Right.
I watched one guy who calls himself the Angry Photographer on YouTube, and he had nothing but high praises for the D7100. So I went ahead, went to Long Island, purchased it. It had power. I had a memory card. I had my 35 millimeter lens.
Oh boy,
1.
off to the races.
Yep. But you know what was funny, dude? I didn't even know how to. I had no idea because the menu system was totally different because I was using an entry level menu system. It was very straight to the point. So imagine having a Samsung phone, and you know how they have that simple layout?
Right.
Imagine having that on a camera and then jumping over to a pure Android experience.
Yep.
And you're like, what? So for 30 minutes, I had no idea how to even take a photo because I had to set things up in a certain way. And I'm snapping the photos. I can't preview them. I'm like, how do I do this? So it was a totally different learning experience. And I got used to that camera because they say get used to the hardware you're using to the point where you don't even have to look down and realize what settings you want to put. You already have that set up. You can do it without looking, and you can focus more on what you want to take the photo of. So I got to that point. And then, of course, a few years later, I upgraded. Actually, I made an addition. I wanted to get into more video, so I bought a Panasonic G7, which had
Nice.
4K.
Nice one.
Yeah, very nice. Very to this day is a great value. Has 4K video. I've taken really good photos with it, and it's very small. So that was my street camera, and I started to leave the D7100 home because, believe it or not, I used to carry my old photography bag with like 4 lenses, my D7100, which is a big full-size DSLR camera, and then my iPad. So I was carrying like a full-blown camera bag to work every day.
Yep. I know that feeling.
Yeah, so I was like, what am I doing? And then I bought the smaller Lumix G7 and just walked around East Village with that every day. And then, of course, I started getting into Fuji, and that was the end of that.
Yeah, so what was the first Fuji you ended up buying? Because I remember you went from the Nikon to the Panasonic, but then I don't remember where you jumped in on Fuji. Was it the XT1 or something? So I want to say
it was the XT10.
XT10.
And once again, if you never watched him, he's the angry photographer. Now he's very annoying. My wife can't stand when I'm watching him because he's very arrogant. But the guy has so much Nikon gear, and he even has a Nikon tattoo.
Oh, geez.
But he started like gloating over the Fuji XT2. And he's like, this is a mirrorless camera. It's, smaller than my full frame cameras, my Nikons and everything like that. He goes, it is the most, he says it's like his legendary camera, so he was like, it's one of my most legendary cameras. Fuji has come a long way, blah, blah, blah. So I started listening to him, and I saw the XT10, and I was like, oh man, they got an XT10. So I purchased it. I traded something in, I believe. No, as a matter of fact, I had 3 cameras, so I knew I was going to sell one. So I got the XT10. The next 3 days, the XT20 comes out. So it was the Nikon all over again.
Oh, geez.
It evolved from Nikon to Fuji. Same thing happened. So, of course, the XT20 had more features, the bigger sensor, and it looked the same. So I was familiar with the size, but it was a little too small for me because it's interchangeable. So like the X100F is a 23 millimeter lens, but that's like what all Fuji enthusiasts use for street photography because it's one lens and it fits in your pocket, things of that sort.
Right.
So this was more interchangeable lens. So when I got a promotion from work, maybe 4 months later, I was like, now I can get the XT2. So I took back, at Best Buy, if you're a VIP member or something like that,
yep,
you get 45 days to do your return.
That's right.
Got the XT2, and that was it. That's when I committed to buying Fuji lenses. Of course, I could use adapters for Nikon, Canon, so forth and so forth. But that XT2 was like built like a tank. It was small, a lot smaller than my D7100, and the better in lower light. The lenses were incredible. So on Nikon, but there was just, because it had the aperture, the ISO, the shutter speed, it had all those dials available on top. It felt very, very retro.
Nice.
And
without
I just fell
being retro.
Yeah. Because in high school, I went to JFK High School, and my freshman year, there was a photography course, and the teacher taught us how to build a camera out of cardboard. And then we had to lift the shutter. Basically it was a pinhole. We had to lift the flap over, and it was up to us to determine how much light we wanted to come in. And you had film inside, and then we had to develop the film. So that's where the roots of my interest in photography came in because my friends and I would buy black and white film, and my friend, somebody would always have a camera, and we do all these, cool poses next to abandoned cars or train tracks, things like that, So we were always the kids with the leather jackets, the Doc Martens. So we were into that, and that's where with the phones, that's where I just kept up. That's why you see me use a lot of black and white.
Right.
And so once I felt the XT2 in person, I was like, wow, this is like a flashback to the old days.
Nice.
And I just stuck with it.
It's funny. I had a similar path. It's weird. I started shooting Sony first. I had the A58, then then I got the A99, and then I'm like, I started doing video, and I'm like, oh man, I could hear it focusing in the video, so I ditched that. Then I made the jump to
Canon D70, right?
I ended up,
D80.
Yeah, I got the Canon 80, the 80D, and love that. But then I was doing Toy Fair, and I'm walking around with this giant camera around my neck, and I was like, all right, this sucks. Then everybody's like, get the Sony, blah blah blah. So I got the Sony, but then I didn't like the fact that you couldn't rotate the screen, And first I got the A6300, then the A55, the 6500, and I said to myself, this camera is all this money, all these lenses, it's great, but number one, would overheat if you tried to do 4K video. And then the other thing was that, even though people were buying external monitors, it's like, listen, this camera costs whatever, $1,500 with the lenses plus the other lenses I bought.
Yeah, and now you got to buy an external monitor.
Yeah, man, I was just
and
like,
make it bulky.
Yep. and mind you, I put the small rig cages on my camera, so which was nice, but still, I'm like, all right, this is ridiculous. So when Canon dropped that M50, I said, all right, I can still do 1080. It does 4K, which I don't do anyway. I only shoot 1080. It still does, a decent amount of frames per second for if I'm, at a wrestling event or something like that. And the Canon glass is just cheap, So, man, it was a no-brainer. So I ended up just going back to the M50. It was small, even with the adapter and the Nifty 50, I could throw it in, like, if I'm wearing, like, cargo shorts, I could just throw it in the cargo pocket, keep it moving.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had a similar upgrade path for you, like you did. My only thing is, I still haven't mastered doing manual photography, so I still kind of cheat with a little auto.
Yeah,
but
I remember I showed you aperture priority.
Hell yeah. I use that on the Canon. I mean on the Sony I had exclusively once you showed me, and I use that to shoot a lot of my stuff. And then now mostly everything else I'm shooting on the iPhone 8 Plus, but I'm going to make the jump to the XS. So we had similar upgrade paths. Now for you, now that you're shooting exclusively with Fuji, and you said you picked up the 23 millimeter. That's the main street lens.
Yeah, I had the 23. So what I have now is I have the 16 millimeter f, which is like Fuji's. Some people say it's Fuji's best lens because it's so flexible. I can do street, I can do landscape, I can do quasi macro,
nice
portraits. So it is very versatile, is weatherproof. It doesn't have in-body stabilization, but it's really sharp. So that's like my main, like it's hard to take it off my camera. Then I traded my 23 millimeter f2, which had really quiet and fast autofocus. So that's what a lot of my older street photography was with that.
Oh, okay.
And believe it or not, it took a long time, not too long, but it took a while to get used to the focal length because I was used to 50 millimeter or 35 millimeter.
Yep.
With
Same
Nikon.
boat.
And 23, I was like, oh my God, I'm too far. Same thing with the 16 because you got such a wide angle that I had to adjust to learning, like, okay, if I want to do street photography, I kind of got to get close.
Yep, you got to get used to zooming with your feet.
Yes, absolutely. Same thing with 23. So I got so used to that focal length that I was able to shoot from the hip, which is hold my camera somewhat in a horizontal fashion. And it looks, and I'm just walking, I'll put it in a high shutter speed, and I would kind of slow down, hit my back focus, and then shoot. Now, what a lot of guys do, or a lot of photographers, male, female, of course, some of the more skilled photographers, especially events. Now, I consider street photography an event because
100%.
you never know what's going to go on. You can see somebody really interesting and you want to shoot them really quick, shoot a photo of them, not just shoot them. Same thing at an event. You never know what type of action is going to occur. So a lot of people use what I was showing you, aperture priority or shutter priority, where they'll put the shutter speed at, let's say, 1,000 if it's a sporting event, and let the camera do everything else, aperture and iOS. And some sports photographers, for example, will tell you they don't care if there's a lot of grain in the photo. They just want to get that shot. Because, you know, you don't want to miss something historic that will cost them money, notoriety, et cetera, et cetera. So and it was surprising, you know, I'll listen to the Fuji Love podcast. Some of the guests that they had, they said they'll put it in automatic when they're doing street photography or events because they don't want to miss out. They said they'd rather get the shot and have everything, let's say, in focus. Like me, I like a lot of, you know, that blurry background, isolate my subjects. They said they just want to get the shot. So sometimes they will leave it on automatic. And I was really surprised.
That's crazy.
But the key thing is that it comes down to the glass. And that's something I had to learn. I was just telling you how I went through 4 cameras in a span of 2 years.
Yep.
When in reality, I had the D7100, which I met a few guys who made a living with the D7100 to this day, and they don't want to get rid of it. And they told me, hey, I spent all the money on glass, which is the lens for those not familiar. And that statement is so true.
Yep.
I used to hear it all the time and now I'm very satisfied with what I have. I have the 16. I have a 35 millimeter f1.4 that I traded for. I traded my 23, believe it or not. So a guy from Europe, he posted on one of the Fuji groups, and I was like, you know what, he was asking specifically for the lens I had. I said, what the hell? Let me ask him if he wants to do this trade. And we made the trade, and it was clean. Lens was clean. Mine was clean as well. And it's a very slow lens because it's one of Fuji's first lenses.
Right.
But the character of that lens is crazy.
And these are all first party, right? These are all Fuji branded lenses. Like you're not.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have a macro. It's a macro lens, 60 millimeter, which takes amazing portrait. Another slow lens. And the other one that I spent the most money ever on a lens. Well, 2 of them were over $900.
Wow.
Each. But the 90 millimeter, which f2, man, that thing has such beautiful background blur, and you can isolate your because of the nice close focus you can get on not close as far as like macro or whatever, but you know, the compression and everything. Oh man, that I look for reasons to use that lens because I can't take it for street photography, you know, because you need something that gives you distance. For that, I would need a lot of distance.
And you want to also, and correct me if I'm wrong, with street photography, it's one of those things where you kind of just want to blend in the background when you're shooting. Because I've seen some of your shots, and I'm like, wow, that person didn't even mind that. You know, like when you shot, I think you were walking, and there was like a street market.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like you almost want to blend in and make it seamless. So, you know, that's definitely one of those things.
Because I stand out already.
Right.
So it's kind of hard for me because, you know, I'm somewhat tall and I have, you know, bald head with a big goatee. And I usually walk fast. So I kind of stand out because if you're in my way, some people think I'm going to run them over or whatever. So I try to like blend in, slow down, try not to make it out. I don't make eye contact. And like I said, a lot of times I'll try to get an image where I'm angling the camera on my side, and then I'll try my best from practice, of course, to make it as level as possible. And back button focusing is essentially I'm replacing the shutter button. You know how you half press it to focus. Yep. I'm using a dedicated back button.
Nice.
So that I'm focused in, and then I use the shutter. So that kind of gives me an advantage.
So you're essentially shooting blind.
Yes.
Wow,
Yes.
that's talent, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say maybe 50% of what if you ever see most of my photos and they're angled kind of crooked, or the photo is angled where it's vertically
Yep.
orientated, that's usually from the hip.
Now,
Unless I'm like really, really focused on somebody's face and you could tell that it was staged or whatever, then that's a different story. But
well, you said you edit, you take your iPad with you. So what do? You pop the SD card out, you throw it in the card reader, plug it into your iPad, and then you just do all your edits on the fly?
Yeah, I have a little dongle that, from Apple, and
right.
It's because now with iOS 12, before you could do RAW, but now you have RAW and JPEG. So I always shoot both. I'll do fine JPEG and RAW. So a lot of times if I'm just going out there and shooting for fun, if I know I'm going to shoot buildings or structures and some people, I'll leave it on JPEG. If I'm at an event and I know I want some flexibility, I'll do RAW and JPEG.
Okay.
And so the iPad gives me the capability of uploading both directly into my iPad. And then when you activate Lightroom, it will break it down into RAW and JPEG. So I keep it at RAW, and then it will give me more flexibility when editing. And with the pencil, it's like so easy.
Now, the other thing I was going to ask, with, you said you're uploading. Are you importing it back to your device for the upload, or is your iPad have cellular data also?
No, what I'll do is, now that, because before it was a lot harder, so because I had the Note 8, I would have to keep it on my iPad and then use my phone as a hotspot.
Right.
So if I wanted to upload it to Flickr or Google Drive, somewhere that I can download it to my Note 8, I would have to use some kind of cloud storage. Now I can just easily AirDrop it to my phone and then upload it to wherever I want to upload it from my phone. You're not going to get the full RAW file, but you'll get the final product.
Oh, so then you AirDrop from your iPad back to your phone.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned Flickr before. I know that, a lot of, now that with Instagram, are you sharing the bulk of your photos on Instagram, or are you still putting them in places like Flickr or SmugMug or?
I'll try. Like, I haven't really focused on Flickr as much, but every once in a while I'll put an entire album of photos there.
Yep, I get the notification.
Yeah.
Jose uploaded some photos. I'll be like, let's see what he got.
Yeah, it's like you're one of the few that follow me. Like, It's really dead for me as far as my feed is concerned. But Flickr, I'll post on Flickr. It'll be a mixture of stuff that I edited and stuff that I did with my phone. And I'll get, like, I think my highest like or the photo that had the most likes was maybe 100 likes.
Wow.
Like, I don't get like that one photo that gets like, 20,000 likes. Like, not that I'm saying that I deserve it, but it goes hand in hand with that YouTube, the calculations and what works. Like, you just don't know what's going to work, like, I'll think like, oh, this photo's pretty dope, and it gets 12 likes, and I'm like, damn, my other one got 50, and that kind of was whack. So you just don't know. So I just throw whatever. As same thing with YouTube, how you were saying that you make these videos, you make them for you. I do my photography when I upload it to Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. It's because I like them, and I feel that I'm comfortable putting them out there. If it's something, once again, I don't like to go with the trends. I'm not going to post a photo of me holding like a crystal ball, or, one of those see-through bowls, right, looking at the bridge. Like some people, you see a lot of people kind of copying other more popular photography styles or photos, like with the tent and the feet hanging out and things like that. And more power to them, once again, if that's what they want to do. But I just put whatever I feel like I like, and then I, whatever type of feedback I get, I appreciate it and move on. And
you were mentioning that, you're sharing the photos. Like, how crucial now that, especially with the explosion of the platform, has Instagram been with you sharing your photos? Do you feel that, given that it's such a photo-centric social media account, that you feel your stuff gets, I don't know, it gets more love there than any place else? Because it's like-minded individuals. Obviously, hashtags play a big part, but do you feel that that's the case?
You know what's really weird? I get more feedback from Facebook.
Really?
Yeah. And it's friends, and it's also people that I follow and follow me back that are into photography.
That's awesome.
Which is weird. You would think it would be Instagram. Once in a while, I get a random account that would be like, wow, this is a great photo. And then I would look, I would thank them, of course, and then look at their stuff to see if they're a spy, some type of spam bot, and they're photographers as well. And I'll look at some of their stuff, give them a like and comment on there. I'll try to return the favor.
Nice. I started messing with
more
Vero.
Photographers on there, but yeah, it's really not that interactive with me as anyway. I don't know about you.
No, more luck. I jumped, I started messing with Vero because there's a guy, Jason LeBoy. He does like,
Jason. Yep.
Yeah. So I signed up for Vero. I started posting photos on Vero. And then what I ended up doing was I kind of messed around with it for a bit, but the gram is the gram, man. Like it's so massive at this point. So I'm like, it's like with Snapchat. It's like once Instagram added all those features that Snapchat had, it's like I barely go into Snapchat. I actually go to Snapchat to watch like news. Like, there's like a couple of channels like like Daily Mail and stuff like that. So I'll pop in and watch that. But like Instagram has become like probably the most frequently used social media platform on my phone. Instagram here first, and then Facebook second, and then Twitter third sometimes. But the thing about it is that with Instagram, once, everybody's like, oh, well, you got to kind of figure out your niche and stuff like that. And I laugh because I'm like, yo, what if I just want to share my stuff, and that's what ended up happening. I ended up separating my personal interest from, the Rageworks brand, and I started just doing stuff personally. And I noticed that more people just start following me. Like, I put more photos of food, more food people follow me. I put more photos of sneakers, more sneaker people follow me. So, it's just funny how that works. But in your case, I always like it because you always make New York City the star in your photos. Yeah. And I think that's what matters most when it comes to composition. And I don't even say it because you're my boy, but I say it just because you do something that, we were talking about being unique before we started recording, and that's one thing. You keep New York as that centerpiece. Like, that's a New York shot. That's the subway. That's, the 59th Street Bridge. That's Columbia. Hell, I think when we came, I was going through some photos when we came out of the gaming event, and we went on a mock photo walk.
Yep.
walking over there in Columbus Circle, man. And, we were just shooting for the hell of it, man. And we, it was just fun,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Spur of the moment, just, admiring the surroundings that we sometimes take advantage of. We take it for granted that we live in such a beautiful city. And so as someone who's grown up here all my life, and, I like to share, like, especially I have friends who used to live in New York. So like one of my co-hosts said, yo, you always take these photos, and it's kind of like even though I live in Texas, it's like kind of like I can be there for one quick second. And so that's why I constantly take like the non-popular photo of happenings in New York. I basically try to keep it where it's my trip to work and my trip back from work.
Nice.
While in the subway or the car, whatever.
Well, I always like it too. It has that Humans of New York vibe.
Yeah.
Which I like, man.
I got wind of that, and I watched his videos, and I'm like, holy crap, that dude is, courageous, number one. And the way he makes it so, once again, he makes it feel personable.
Yep.
Not forced, not, hey, everybody. He said, oh, I even raised my voice a little higher so I could be more pleasing. Because he's a tall dude. I never met him, but I watched a bunch of his videos, but he made it personable. And I'm like, I can't do that. Because somebody's going to be like, oh my God, why is this guy coming up to me? So that I can respect that, because that's something that me personally, I don't think I can do. So that's what I gravitate to things that I know I can't do, but other people are like knocking it out of the park, and I can respect that. So there's ingenuity or creativity that's being shown, like that. When I saw that, like by luck, I saw it, and I was like, holy crap, this is awesome.
That's tremendous. I look at, like I said, a lot of, especially now that I'm doing more photo stuff here and there, and, we've done stuff together, and I've covered Photo Plus. I actually skipped it this year for obvious reasons, but,
yeah.
It's just interesting that an image can tell a story just based on the person who's shooting it, because, if you shoot it, and you do a black and white photo, you convey a different emotion than if it was a color photo, or if it was a photo that had more filters. So it's crazy the amount of storytelling, and best of all, to your point, that you can tell so many of these stories with just a device in your pocket.
Yeah, which is beautiful. We started out talking about how tough it was to podcast and using a little flimsy Radio Shack headphones, and now, the technology in our pocket is like leaps and bounds ahead of what I used to use. And just to quickly go back to the photography stuff really quick, like I try not to do homeless people, because like it's so easy to just go off to some homeless guy, and it's like, yeah, we all know that that's part of the New York City vibe.
Yep.
And if I have a few out there, I try to make it look as part of a story, but not the main story.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't want to show somebody's hardship and try to get likes in a cheap way.
Yep.
So and you were asking me about the business side of things. It's kind of where my stubbornness comes in, because I want to stay true to what I believe in.
Your roots.
Yeah. And I don't want to like become, and unfortunately a lot of successful artists, content creators, they have to do something else in order to support their true passion.
100%.
Fortunately for me, I have a skill trade, elevator technician. But if I had a choice, I wouldn't be doing that as a career. But if I, let's say, wanted to do photography as a full-time job, there would have to be some type of compromise where I would be like, all right, I'm going to have to do a wedding to make some money for this month. I'd rather do like portrait shots of a business or something. But
right.
Like a lot of people say, there is money to be made in photography. You just have to kind of compromise, do something you're not 100% willing to do or thinking of doing, just to keep your head above water and make some money, and then build your niche outside of that work environment, and just use the finances to build upon your niche. And there's a few, like Kevin Mullins, big Fuji film user, and he used to use Canon, I believe, in his photography when he does weddings, and he's a big time wedding photographer. He has a freaking X Pro 2 with, I think he uses mainly 2 lenses tops. And most of his wedding photography is in black and white. And he does that documentary style that I've grown up using. And so that's why I gravitated to him. I'm like, oh, this is how I would shoot a wedding if I ever did a wedding. Is people like getting the true emotions. They don't know I'm even there.
Right. Blending in.
Not posing, trying to look pretty. Of course, he does his typical photo shots where everybody's together and you got the bride and groom showing off the ring, things like that. But overall, he gets requests to do weddings because they want that old time black and white look, and they want that candid look. But you gotta work on it. You gotta build that type of reputation, that trust, where people say, all right, this guy, this is his niche and it works. And that's what I want. So that's basically what I'm trying to do before I try to commit and make money, I'm working on a part-time basis of making money before I think of going any further. So it's a lot of layers to work on.
I think that's actually a good way before we jump into the hot seat segment of the show. I like to always like ask my guests, especially in your case, we'll start with the easiest one, with your origins. to an aspiring podcaster, to somebody who's contemplating jumping into this now, what's one piece of advice you'd give them?
To podcasting?
Yep.
All right. So we spoke about how picking up bad habits, or not necessarily bad habits, but picking up habits where you're kind of blending in with everybody else. And the hardest thing nowadays is to stick out because of who you are, your natural talents, your personality. You've seen it on my Twitter feed where people attack me because I'm dead honest about things that I own and I feel strongly about, but that's not allowed. So I keep going. I feed off it because I'm like, you're not going to change what I believe in.
Right.
No matter how many times you guys troll me and try to discourage me from speaking what I want to speak. So is that my way of sticking out? Maybe it is, but it's not easy. So what advice I would give people, whether you're creating a podcast, YouTube, whatever, just creating, period. You're going to get a lot of people who assume that they know more than you. Listening to feedback is great. Learning how to take constructive criticism is very important because the individual looking to start a podcast might assume, hey, I know more than you about the topic that I'm talking about. So who are you to tell me what I'm doing wrong or I'm doing right? So take criticism, pick the things you want to learn from each critique, even some of the very obvious troll comments. They will say something. A lot of people used to tell me that I pause too much. I sound too mellow, and that's just who I am.
Right.
But I learned that, okay, I need to speed things up a little bit when I talk. I need to cut down on the pauses.
Right.
That's stuff I need to work on. Even vocabulary. When you hear how I used to sound in Podtacular, my first episode, I'm straight out of the Bronx talking like, hey, what's up? And then what you hear now is a lot different. So it's a constant rotation or not rotation, wrong word, but you're constantly learning. You need to constantly learn. So that's one thing I would say. Okay. Learn from critique, accept critique, but learn from it. Learn what you can do better and learn the craft of whatever you want to talk about. Try to be the expert, but don't try to be too arrogant to where you refuse to learn. So nice. That would be my advice.
What about for aspiring photographers, since that's your newest passion?
All right. Photography is, once again, you're creating content. And so I get people who tell me, man, you do nothing but black and white. Why don't you do more color? And sometimes I will, but that's not
who you are.
Yeah, exactly. And it's an extension for me personally. Photography is an extension of who I am. So depending on the mood I'm in, that you'll see a different trend of different types of photographs that I'll take. And once again, it's about learning. Photography is one thing that you might learn the entire menu system like the back of your hand, but now you got to learn different aperture settings. You got to learn ISO, shutter speed, and learn if you want to go manual. Now you got to know when to adjust your shutter speed so that you get sharper images. Like a lot of people don't realize that shutter speed is very important for sharper images. You could be steady, but if you're shooting at 30, at a shutter speed of 30, you're at risk of getting a blurry image. So shutter speed is important. Aperture, if you have like my lens, I have two lenses that are 1.4. If I put them at 1.4, I'm gonna get a small piece of somebody's eye that is really sharp, and everything's going to be blurred out because of my distance, because of my aperture, so on and so on. So you might think, hey, I know this camera, but like the back of my hand, but then all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is not coming out the way I want it. So you need to study, like self-study. There's a lot of information out there, and there's no reason why you can't study the importance of each factor. Now, when it comes to creativity, that's one thing that nobody can tell you about. And it goes with the podcasting advice. Stick with what you know, stick with what you're passionate about, and don't let anyone discourage you that, hey, you should take wedding photos instead of taking photos of architecture. If that's what you want to do, just do it, knock it out of the park, and then experiment here and there. It will come. naturally. But stick with your passion first. Whatever you like shooting, hopefully it's not homeless people. But, whether it's homeless people, you're still going to have to learn that camera. So just like the podcast advice, learn, and stick within your limits and believe in them.
Nice. All right. I think that's a good way to close out the third degree, our interview portion of the show. We're going to jump into the hot seat, just a series of rapid fire questions, real casual,
Awesome.
real easy. What are three mobile apps that you can't live without on any mobile device?
I would have to say Lightroom for the photos.
Yep.
Facebook, because it keeps me in touch with old high school friends and family that I have throughout the United States, which is kind of messed up because I could always use the phone, but since everybody uses, social media or social networks, so
yep.
Facebook would be one thing. And I guess Gmail. Of course.
Nice. That's a good one. You're a desktop user and a mobile user. Any reason why you never opted to have a laptop? Like why would you just prefer using mobile device and desktop?
Yeah, I have a laptop here, Windows laptop. We moved along. It still works.
Last time you turned it on?
yeah, it's been a long time. Bought some MacBook Pros here and there, even MacBook Airs to be a little more mobile, but realized that
it's just not the same.
It's not. It was unnecessary.
Okay.
Because as I stated with the iPad Pro, it was like way more capable of doing what I wanted to do than a MacBook Air.
Nice.
And a MacBook is expensive. And we did buy one a few months ago, and then we decided to get the desktop. Like, you know what? The desktop would benefit me more. I have more storage capabilities and expandability, and as we all know with Apple, is like 256 gigs. It's not going to do anything for content creators.
Nope, definitely not. Okay.
So, yeah, limitations, I guess.
All right. But, first place you go when you unlock your phone?
It'll be Gmail.
Okay.
Yeah, check my email, see what's up.
What's one website you recommend to people often?
All right. One of my go-to websites is DP Review.
Nice.
It's mainly focused on cameras, and they have a big community, so they have forums for every brand.
Absolutely. I love those guys. Whenever I'm researching a camera, I'm like, well, that's where I'm going. Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely. Or you can go to josebphotography.com.
Nice. There you go. This might be an easy answer, but you might surprise me. Favorite piece of tech besides your phone and your iPad?
It's a tough choice between any specific type of tech. Like, is it
just favorite piece? Yeah, whatever.
Tech general?
favorite piece of tech besides those items.
I'm gonna have to go with my Fuji XH1.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's semi-retro / modern, bigger hand grip, but it's an absolute beast. In body stabilization. It's one of those purchases that's like, I'm glad I made this purchase.
Nice. Of course, being a gamer, what was the last game you played?
Last game I actually played was Madden 2019.
Wow.
I think that's the latest one because every year they come out with one.
Yep.
But Red Dead Redemption 2 is coming out, which I'm going to preload.
Nice.
And that comes out tomorrow.
Nice.
So I can't wait for that one.
So that answers your last gaming purchase, which is going to be Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh, okay.
Nice. All right. Of course, we talk about toys here. What's a favorite toy or collectible that you're obsessing over? I know you're a big Voltron fan.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Yeah, that's on your radar, huh?
Yeah, Voltron, I have plenty of Voltron memorabilia because I grew up as a huge Voltron fan, and the next series that I'm trying to get is I want Mumra from Thundercats.
Right.
And I want Skeletor and He-Man from He-Man.
Nice.
So those are the guys I'm looking for. eventually I'll work on those, but I even have the Lego set, the Voltron Lego set. It's still in the box. It's like,
that's crazy. You're gonna build it?
Find as much. I don't know, man.
That's a lot of pieces, man. I saw the box. I was like, wow.
A lot is a big box too. So right now, the box is so nice because it has like the cartoon lions, the lions from the '84 cartoon, and so I don't want to open it.
Nice. So, now you're also a big Mezco collector. You and your son, right?
Yes, he just got one today.
Who'd you pick up?
For his birthday, he got one of the Batman.
Okay.
With the I forgot what is it, he has the long cowl, the long, very long pointy ones.
Oh yeah. Yep, I know exactly which one you're talking about. They've done different ones, and that's, I believe, the last one in the series.
Well, he has the one with the gray suit.
Okay.
The one with the black, the latest one that's coming out, is still on pre-order. So we've waited like 5 months. We're still waiting for that one.
Okay.
But he's very patient, which is surprising for a 17-year-old.
Of course.
He's like, all right, well, let's pre-order it and I'll wait.
Yeah, you've picked up some nice ones, man. I know you had some really dope Predators, some Predator figures you picked up.
Yeah, he has all of those on his glass display. And right now he's more into the DC stuff. He's like a big DC fan. So it's Spider-Man. Spider-Man, of course, is
Marvel.
Is Marvel, but it's Batman, Joker. He's trying to get all the Justice League, and and Spider-Man's like his go-to Marvel character. So,
and you guys are only buying exclusively Mezco, or are you messing with other brands too, or is Mezco like your default? Mezco
is probably second to Mafex.
All right.
He'll buy Mafex, SH Figure Arts. It all depends on the size, because he's very particular about the size of the characters he wants. So if he wants, I think Mafex is like 4-inch or something.
Yep.
So if he wants to stick with that, he'll look at a SH Figure Art between that and Mafex. And then, of course, if he wants scale, he'll take Mezco.
Nice. Now, on the subject of toys, growing up, what was your favorite toy or collectible growing up?
Man, growing up, unfortunately, I didn't have too many toys. I guess that's why I buy a lot. So I guess that's why I'm always buying them now. But my cousins always, how we always had that family member that had all the toys, and we go to their house just for that.
Yep.
So they had, if they had all their stuff, they would be pretty well off. But they didn't have Star Wars. They weren't into Star Wars like I was. So I had this little metallic Millennium Falcon. It was made out of metal, and it was maybe about 5 inches. And I used to love that damn thing.
Nice.
Of course, being like 8 years old, I would make believe it's flying and, talk like Han Solo. And
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that was like I even look at Millennium Falcons now, but they're so big.
Yep.
That I don't want to get one until I have the space. So, but I'm like that's on the radar, like a Millennium Falcon. So
nice.
Yeah, I would have to say as a kid that was like my most memorable one.
And it was die-cast, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Die-cast.
Very cool. The stuff that should have killed us.
Yeah, like the Kabangers.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Now, one last question on this, and this one's always interesting. What was the last thing you purchased that was less than $100 that has either made your life easier or just more enjoyable?
I would have to say, and I have it right here in front of me on my desk. It's a light from a company called Lytra.
Okay. Yep.
And they make these LED lights and
the cubes.
Yes. Yeah. And it has a magnetic strip. So not only do I use it for video when lighting up a subject, that I could put right on top of the camera on the hot shoe, I've used it for work. And I put it on the metal frames of the elevator and put it on full blast. And guys were like, wow, that little thing illuminates that much light.
That's crazy. Yep.
And then the big test was one day from the 6th floor. It fell all the way down the pit.
Oh, no.
I just had this damn thing for a week and it was working. The screen didn't crack or the light didn't crack, and I got some scuffs. But if you ever held one in person, this thing is like beefy for such a small device. So at the time it was $70 something, and it's been like extremely versatile. Like sometimes I'll just throw it in my bag or leave it in the car. Like eventually I want to buy a few more because it's really worth the price.
Nice. All right.
And waterproof.
Oh, well, waterproof is key.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
This one's an easy one. And where do you see yourself with photography in a year? Or where would you like to see yourself a year from now? Well,
I'd say, because I've started with the website, I have a few business cards. So I'm borderline, I've had a few.
Got your toes in the pool.
Exactly. So I'm looking to maybe stand halfway into the pool by next year, where I have a few paid gigs under my belt, maybe develop a relationship with some people that might have their own business and maybe want some professional portrait shots, and I'll be that guy they would call.
Okay.
So that's where I'm kind of hoping I'd be, instead of jumping straight into a full-blown business where I can't handle it.
You want to freelance?
Yes. So hopefully I can have a few established clients and then take it from there.
Nice. All right. And last but not least, of course, where can people find your work and connect with you?
You can find me on iTunes, the Post Game Report. That's my podcast since, I believe, 2007. Yep. And my website is josebphotography.com. I try to find something a little smaller. Maybe I'll change it down the road. But for now, if you want to see a mixture of my work, I have it broken down into different categories. So this way, if anyone's interested, they can see. I have events, I have street photography, toys. So I try to keep it somewhat simple, but I have a lot of photos there. So that's something else I also got to clean up. But it's there. If people are interested in my work, they can contact me via email. And on Twitter is at ATJVB. And Facebook. But Facebook, I keep that for family and friends and some colleagues, stuff like that. So mainly on Instagram, I think it's Joe Beta.
It's JV Beta. The fact that I know that by memory is pretty crazy.
And I don't.
JV Beta on IG.
That's somewhere else that if you want to see my stuff. And on YouTube is Joe Beta.
Nice. All right.
I think. I don't
know. I will definitely include links to everything JVB talked about in this episode, as well as all the ways that you can reach him. JVB, thank you for sharing the toys and tech of your trade.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
That wraps up our interview with Jose Betancourt, a.k.a. JVB. Links to his website and social media will be in the show notes for this episode. We will also be providing links to the software, hardware, and toys that were discussed on air. And just a quick disclaimer, and for full transparency, those links in some cases may be affiliate links where we will receive a small commission if you purchase any of those items via the link we provide. That money goes towards giving us new equipment, covering hosting fees, and a host of other things that keep the lights on at RageWorks and allow us to give you awesome content. So anytime you do a purchase, please use the links we provide. We would really, really appreciate it. Last but not least, if you would like to be a guest on a future episode of Toys and Tech of the Trade, fill out the contact form on rageworks.net. Let us know a little bit about yourself, and we'll try and set something up. And, of course, if you want to keep up with us, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. If you're a professional, we'd always love to hear from you. If you are following us on Facebook, take a moment, join our RageWorks Facebook group, interact with myself and the rest of the staff, as well as other RageWorks fans, talking comics, MMA, wrestling, toys, and everything that we cover on air on our various shows and on the site. Thank you guys for checking out episode 5 of Toys and Tech of the Trade. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Some call it insight. Others call it vision. At Pershing, we call it perspective. A perspective you'll benefit from a custodian you can rely on. One who can help navigate the big picture, and whose products give you a competitive edge. One who considers everything. What will help you succeed today and tomorrow? Open yourself to a new perspective and open the possibilities. Consider everything. BNY Mellon Pershing. Learn more at Pershing.com/RIA. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Some call it insight. Others call it vision. At Pershing, we call it perspective. A perspective you'll benefit from a custodian you can rely on. One who can help navigate the big picture, and whose products give you a competitive edge. One who considers everything. What will help you succeed today and tomorrow? Open yourself to a new perspective and open the possibilities. Consider everything. BNY Mellon Pershing. Learn more at Pershing.com/RIA. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC, member FINRA SIPC.